And welcome to day 38 of the Atlantic Hurricane season, day number 56 in the Eastern Pacific, and that's where we still have the action at the moment, though there is lots of stuff going on elsewhere now. Tropical Storm Erick beginning to weaken near the Mexican coastline, though still posing a threat to the Baja California Peninsula. Invest 95L in the Atlantic now with a high chance of development into a tropical depression or even a tropical storm as it moves towards the west-northwest, more on that shortly. And also two other systems as well, Tropical Depression 7, which has formed in the Western Pacific, likely to become a tropical storm and even a typhoon, and could pose a real threat to Taiwan and parts of Japan and China over the next few days. And we also even have a southern hemisphere invest, which we'll come on to in a moment when it comes up with the satellite imagery. There's the Pacific view there, the Atlantic view here. You can see what's left of Invest 94 moving towards the left hand side of the Gulf of Mexico, the western part of the Gulf of Mexico, into Mexico and Texas, and Invest 95L, which is the quite conspicuous feature there in the centre of the Atlantic, moving towards the west-northwest. And looking at the Indian Ocean, you can see here Invest 98S has formed, quite uncharacteristic for this time of year, of course, being the southern hemisphere, winter and all that. That storm is not likely to develop at this stage. Looking at the sea surface temperatures then, waters remaining warm off the Mexican coast, though not where Erick is heading. Erick's already over some cooler waters and that's contributing to its demise at the moment. The northwestern part of the Gulf of Mexico remains fairly warm at the moment, 28 degrees or above in Celsius, that's 82 degrees Fahrenheit, and in the northern Indian Ocean, waters remaining warm here, and especially the parts of the Pacific as well, indeed, where the current storm is in Tropical Depression 7. Warm waters, it should take advantage of that and become a tropical storm very soon. So here's Erick, currently with winds of 60 miles per hour, pressure of 996 millibars. It's reached 20 degrees north and it's currently going to move towards the northwest over the next 72 hours. It will slowly weaken and turn extratropical eventually, as a post-tropical cyclone, remnant low perhaps, as it begins to weaken. Tropical storm warnings are still in effect though, from Santa Fe to La Paz on the Baja California Peninsula, the southern part of that peninsula. Tropical storm warnings still in effect, so we may still see some tropical storm winds and indeed some heavy rain, which could lead to some local flooding in that region. And here's Tropical Depression 7W, which is located in the Western Pacific near the Northern Mariana Islands. Wind speeds currently 35 miles per hour, pressure of 1000 millibars. Expected to move generally westwards as a tropical storm before becoming a typhoon, likely in around 3 days' time, and then curve slightly towards the north, possibly striking Taiwan as a typhoon, or indeed some of the Japanese islands as a typhoon. So let's take a look at the latest satellite imagery then. You can see Tropical Storm Erick. The centre became exposed by the looks of it for a brief period before the next burst of cloud came over the centre of the storm there. You can see in the last few frames that occurring, so it's still fighting at the moment, Erick, but it doesn't really have that long in terms of lasting out there in the Eastern Pacific. Here's Tropical Depression 7, looking much more healthier, certainly has a future ahead of it as a tropical storm, as a typhoon, but at the moment it's still a tropical depression, but I think that will have no problems intensifying as it moves towards the west with the very warm waters it has at its feet at the moment. And here's Invest 95L moving slowly towards the west, or not so slowly as a matter of fact, at a moderate pace across the Atlantic. You can see some dry air ahead of the storm. That may interfere with development slightly, but overall conditions appear favourable, and that's why there's a 70% chance of development on this storm at the moment, as according to the NHC, the National Hurricane Centre, as of midnight UTC. Looking at the model ones then, the CMC certainly has a very interesting scenario with two storms in the Atlantic, one in the Gulf of Mexico that forms there in the Gulf of Mexico and stalls offshore for a while, whilst the other storm, Invest 95, moves past, making landfall in Cuba. I think that made about landfall in Bahamas as well before striking the United States. The ECMWF isn't really as exciting, but it doesn't really show much going on here, especially in terms of Invest 95. You certainly see it getting lost. It doesn't appear much on this at all. The GFS model is fairly similar. You can see the Invest moving through the Caribbean as a very weak system. Now what's more interesting about GFS is that there's a Cape Verde type storm forming behind that in a few days' time, which could be a rather interesting system to watch, but that's quite far out, so that may not come to fruition. The NavGem fairly quiet as well, doesn't really predict much going on, just a few weak low pressure systems in the Atlantic for that period. The GFDL model predicts 95L to become a tropical storm very briefly before encountering the Lesser Antilles, the northern part of the Lesser Antilles, as a tropical storm and then weakening to a depression. The HWRF also fairly similar, perhaps a little bit stronger, as a tropical storm striking the northern part of the Lesser Antilles. I've forgotten the name, Leeward Islands, before moving on. This is the modelled ones here for the storm at the moment. You can see the consensus is mainly towards the central part of the Lesser Antilles and then moving towards the northwest eventually. So here's the Western Pacific models as well. The CMC model here has the typhoon, has the storm becoming a typhoon and moving towards the west-northwest, a fairly level heading until it reaches Taiwan according to the CMC, possibly a category 2 storm as it moves through there as well. The GFS fairly similar in terms of intensity, but as you can see it has a more northerly component, so the models are split at the moment. These two main ones are, at least anyway, as the storm moves through Japan and then China as it moves towards the northwest. The overall predicted season scores then for July the 8th so far then. Ken remains in first place with 91 points, Typhoon Bopa with 83 and Hurricane Melissa 20 with 81 points. That's the top three at the moment as of July the 8th. Don't forget, you can submit your own predictions, your own storm totals at the website force13.com/interactive. Just click the 2013 predicted season button and then you should just submit the totals that you see fit, and it should be put on the leaderboard in due course, usually in about a day or two, but I have to do it manually, so no guarantees on that, unfortunately. So what happened on this day then, on July the 8th? 1988, Tropical Storm Carlotta formed in the Eastern Pacific. In 94, Tropical Storm Daniel also formed in the Eastern Pacific, that one's pictured there. And in 2000, Typhoon Kirogi brushed the coast of Japan as a Category 1 storm, resulting in 4 fatalities and $140 million in damages, and that weakened from a Category 4 storm, which was its peak out in the Western Pacific on that one. 2003, Tropical Storm Dolores formed in the Eastern Pacific, and Tropical Storm Claudette also formed on the very same day in the Atlantic, obviously becoming a hurricane later on. In 2005 as well, of course, Dennis moved over Cuba as a Category 4 major hurricane, and we all know what that one went on to do, moving towards the northwest at that point, moving over Cuba on this day, July the 8th. Not much else happened, as a matter of fact, quite a quiet day generally on this day, July the 8th there. Don't forget you can track any storm that forms, or indeed any that are going right now, including Erick at the moment, and the new storm in the Western Pacific that's likely to get its name very soon. At the website force13.com/storm tracking, that's the main storm tracking page, where you're presented with the overview map where the storms are, and little tables at the top and bottom which show you which storms are active and any warnings that are currently in effect. And then you can go further in depth, basin by basin, to see the tracking maps, and of course any storms that are active and information about those, and indeed warning information as that becomes relevant. Obviously the warnings are currently in effect in Mexico at the moment, the Baja California Peninsula, in anticipation for Tropical Storm Erick, a weakening storm, but nonetheless still could be a dangerous one at that. And don't forget you can visit the social pages as well, YouTube, Facebook and Twitter. Force 13 is on all three of those. Don't forget to show your support by doing the usual, liking, commenting, subscribing, favouriting, and anything else that comes to mind, because I've forgotten the rest. But there you have it. I'm ill. Come on, give me a break. But there you have it. That's the current situation. And the next update will be coming at around midnight UTC on July the 9th, 2013. That would be Tuesday morning, early hours of Tuesday morning, though in the United States that's obviously Monday evening. It's all confusing with the time zones, but there you have it, with perhaps an update in the middle of the day on Monday if necessary on either Erick or the new storm in the Western Pacific. But that's it for now.